Welcome back, everyone. Michael here. I am hiding in the shade a little bit because it is hot out. It was funny, my wife was commenting she felt it was hotter in Montenegro, where I am here today, than in Dubai of late, although that could just be because we had a little bit of a cool spell in Dubai. Cool is still not cool for this time of year in Dubai, is not cold, but cooler than one might expect. Anyway, today I'm going to discuss something which came up in a conversation with a few clients, and I include this in a bunch of what we do when we're examining things for clients, which is related to the subject of foreign exchange rates on cards. So one of the things that will often happen, I see, is people will not have a holistic understanding of what goes on in terms of kind of international optimization, building structures, relocating, etc. So sometimes people tend to fixate on something like tax, and I think that's a bit of a misnomer because you get a lot of bad advice by people focusing excessively on tax. Obviously, I've talked lots about how lifestyle and values and all these sorts of things matter a lot. But the other thing that is important is, even just on the financial side, realizing that the objective is not actually to reduce your tax. The objective is to keep the most money possible. In other words, to optimize your total financial picture. And this is going to include such things as your cost of living, the cost of employees, the cost of offices, the cost of payment processing or accepting payments, of spending money, etc. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about that last one, which can be a bit of an issue when we go to other countries. So I'm going to talk to you about a problem that you can run into in banking in various foreign jurisdictions. And in particular, I'll talk about UAE, Dubai, because a lot of people are moving there these days, and how you can optimize that to make it very favorable, but you need to know the right the right products and things to use. So let's dive in. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. You can find a link to our websites down below, which is offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. And if you're interested in help with relocating abroad, getting second residencies, citizenships, opening companies, forming companies, opening bank accounts, any of these kinds of things, global tax optimization, you can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. Okay, so here's what happens. And I found this was an issue back years ago when we used to be more focusing on Singapore banking and Hong Kong companies, where we'd have Hong Kong banking. So what you'll find is that if you go and you open accounts in Hong Kong, mostly the type of card you get is China Union Pay. They typically do not provide, in a bunch of different banks, Visas and MasterCards. Now there's some exceptions, Citi being a good example. You had the Citi Prestige card in Hong Kong, which is excellent. However, in general, you were talking about something like China Union Pay. Even if you did get something like a Visa card, you would tend to get it in Hong Kong dollars. And similar thing is true in Singapore. The banks issue cards, but they're in Singapore dollars. If you go to someplace like Dubai, most of the cards are in dirhams. And so even though the dirham may be pegged to the US dollar, what you end up finding is that US dollar peg, you still lose out because there's a conversion rate usually of something around 2.5%. And 2.5%, notice that this is on whatever you're spending. So, it's a sort of tax, right, that you need to account for. So what do we do about this? Well, sometimes you can get travel cards in various places, or else what we do is we get cards in other places than where the banking is. So we used to have a situation where quite often we would get cards in places like Europe, US, etc. They'd be prepaid cards, and they would complement a bank account somewhere else. We would transfer funds from the bank account to fund the card. It's not quite ideal, but it's better than nothing. Now, you can look at the travel cards option, and by the way, you can get some situations where you have fairly, like the points can make up for it. So for example, I mentioned that Citi Prestige card that we would help people get quite a bit in Hong Kong, and that particular card has pretty good rewards, and if you're paying in foreign currencies, then you get additional rewards as compared with paying in Hong Kong dollars. So that helps to make up for it. Then at Citi, they actually had pretty good conversion rates. So by the time you factored in the value of the points, if you were doing a good job with your points, typically this meant paying for business or first class tickets, then you were good to go. Now, what is better is if we can get travel cards. What are travel cards? How do those work? Well, I've talked about them in the case of Canada, I mentioned that in Canada you have the Scotia Passport Visa Infinite, and you have the HSBC Premier World Elite card. So you get those as options. I think there's a couple others, but those are the typically two best. And these have no foreign exchange cost. Okay, so you get charged in, it charges in the local currency, but without any sort of a spread. So you don't lose out, even though you're being charged in that currency. So that's not a bad way to go. Now in UAE, there's basically three options you can do for this. You have, first, Abu Dhabi Bank has a travel card you can get. And interestingly, not only does it have no foreign exchange fees, but it actually does also have points, which is great, better than you can get in Europe. You have Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, also has a travel card, same idea, you can get points, so that's great. And the third option is Emirates NDB has these kind of travel prepaid cards, which are, it's not as good because you're in a situation where you have, you're gonna not get the points, right? But on the other hand, what you can do is you can load it with a given currency. I think there's like 12 currencies or something at sports, and that way you can pay in your local currency. The other thing you can of course do is you can get the Wise card. So I've talked lots about the Wise debit card and the Wise account. Big fan of it for the most part. You typically save fees. The user experience is great. They are pretty risk averse, so they won't deal with a bunch of different types of scenarios. But other than that, it's quite good. So anyway, depending on where you are, that's what I would look for. I would look, number one, can you get a travel card? Well, obviously, can you get a local currency card? Right? That's the first thing. If you can't, can you get a travel card? Otherwise, can you fund a card somewhere else that is in the currency that you want and ideally has points? So one way to do this as well would be to, say you want to spend in US dollars, get a US card as a foreigner. There's some ways to do this. Essentially, the hack that you want to look for is you want to look for what are the cards that illegal immigrants are using. As sad as that sounds, or as weird as it sounds, the reality is there's 20 million or so illegal immigrants in the US. These people it's a big market for credit products. And so you don't necessarily have to have the same credit that Americans do. There's fewer options. You have to build the credit over time, things like this. But on the other hand, there can be a real payoff to that credit if you want to do some other investing, etc. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Put them in the comments below, and we will see you on the next video.